So the number of available energy levels for the occupation of particles like electrons, holes, etc. It depends on the dimensions of the object or the material you are taking. If it is a bulk material, then bulk material will have three dimensions. In all three dimensions, the electron can move, and there is no restriction in the motion of the electron in any of the dimensions. And also we have seen that the energy levels are continuous and they vary. The number of available energy states, that is per unit volume, density of states, varies as e power half for three-dimensional ones. Here, whatever I have shown is only for semiconductors. That's why we are calling it as quantum well, quantum wire, and quantum dot. And now, other materials also may exist in the same dimensions: 3D, 2D, 1D, and 0D. So if I go for two dimensions, the third dimension is so small and negligible compared to the remaining two dimensions. That means this is very large and this is large, and the third dimension, this is very, very small, negligible compared to other. Therefore, the electron motion is confined only to two dimensions and the third dimension is suppressed. So that we say that the electron is confined. And in case of the two-dimensional materials, the DOS, or we say the density of states, is proportional to e power 0 or constant. Up to here we have n, then it is constant, and in the next level or next say energy level we have constant again like this. And coming to the quantum wire, which is a one dimension, that means this dimension and this dimension is so small negligibly compared to the third dimension. Thereby, electron motion is confined to confined to only one dimension. The confinement is there, confined, so electron cannot take all three directions to move in structures made by one dimensions, which are called as quantum wires. And in case of this, we have seen that the density of states varies as e power minus 1 by 2. And coming to the quantum dot, which is a zero dimension, that means all zero dimension, all the dimensions are comparably small, which may be like a point. We know that in mathematical concept, a point is a dimensionless. So in such cases, the energy or the density of states varies as a step function delta E. That's why the curves are step functions, something like this. So the calculation of number of available energy states is important to keep the available particles. So based on this, the above knowledge, we will now look into classification of solids based on energy bands. And the energy bands formation and also the existence is mathematically derived in the earlier classes using Croney-Penny model. Croney-Penny model has given that this is the case of Croney-Penny model where we have the energy band and this allow. These are the bands which I have seen. The bands are nothing but a group of slightly different energy levels and closely spaced. And the Croney-Penny model helped us to see that there exist quantum mechanically allowed energy states or solutions to Schrodinger's equations, and those regions we called as bands, allowed bands, where the particles can exist. But here particles cannot exist because there are no energy levels. This is a very simplified approach because we have seen that the periodically varying potentials in a solid we have approximated as a square well potentials, but they are actually parabolic in shape. Therefore, in real crystals, the potential energy is more complicated than we have used the concept of Croney-Penny model. So therefore, the energies that are not uniform or energy gaps are not uniform in size and also get modified when you add impurities or if there are any defects in the crystal system. These actual scenarios will give rise to an important concept of knowing the electronic behavior of a semiconductor. So we are now concentrating on semiconductors more to see the applications of semiconductor as as devices in many of the electronic circuits. So this is the concept which we have already learned uh, in the earlier class. So we will extend this to segregate the solids into different categories as metals, semiconductors, and insulators by the, the gap between an allowed energy level and the forbidden energy level. So first we look in this the conductors. Conductors are those materials whose conduction band, this is the conduction band, top is the conduction band because this is because of valence electrons and above. The energy levels due to the empty states, and valence band is due to valence electrons in the atom. This is the valence band. So in metals, actually the valence band and the conduction band are overlapped. That means the conduction band is from here to here, if I suppose say, and valence band is here to here. They are overlapped. It means that there is no gap between a conduction band and a valence band. As there is no Eg, there is energy gap between the conduction band and the valence band, any electron at or in the valence band with the available thermal energy at room temperature, if I take room temperature RT, the available energy may be KT, I'll write it as this KT, K is Boltzmann constant, is sufficient to move the electrons very easily. Means electrons are now free to move from valence band to conduction band because they are overlapped. As this overlapping is there, as electrons are moving from valence band to conduction band, means that we will find electrons in the conduction band or will find more free electrons. As the electrons are free, they are ready to conduct both electricity and thermal energy. Therefore, by band theory, we define metals or conductors are those for which conduction band and valence band are superposed and there is no energy gap between them. Or, in other words, there is no difference between valence band and conduction band in metals. So, therefore, a conductor or a metal has plenty of free electrons. Free electrons in the sense that they are not bound electrons to any particular atom, uh, just like a valence electron bound to a particular atom. Therefore, the conduction bands and the valence bands are overlapped in a metal or a conductor. Thereby, the electrons will easily go from valence band to conduction band and available for conduction. So, the resistance of such materials is very low and the conductivity is high. And you have know that the examples of conductors are silver, gold, aluminum, copper, etc. Many are there. So the next we will look at insulators. So in insulators, the conduction band is completely empty, no electrons are there here, and valence band is filled, and the electrons which are there in valence band, if they want to go to conduction band to produce electrical conduction or thermal conduction, they need an energy greater than 6 electron volts. And this 6 electron volts is not available easily at room temperature, even slightly higher temperature also. Therefore, electrons that are there in valence band cannot go to conduction band, and therefore conduction band is completely empty. As the conduction band is completely empty, no free electrons are available. Therefore, the electric conduction or thermal conduction is zero, or we say very, very low. But at elevated temperatures, some of the electrons may be going to the conduction band and you have very little conduction. But if the temperature is too high, that high heat energy may spoil and damage the solid itself. Therefore, there is a limitation that the available electrons in the conduction band are very, very small even at elevated temperatures, and therefore the conduction is not there in those materials where conduction band and valence band are separated by a huge energy gap. As the energy gap is very large, there are no free electrons and therefore conductivity is very, very small. And some of these examples of insulators are glasses, wood, mica, paper, etc. Many things you can take it. The third important classification is semiconductors, which is more important for us, and we'll concentrate more on the classification of the semiconductors. So look at this. We have very small energy gap between the conduction band and the valence band. And this is approximately equal to 1 electron volt. And this 1 electron volt difference energy can be supplied at room temperature or little higher temperatures. Thereby, some of the electrons from valence band can go to conduction band, and therefore we have moderate number of electrons. We don't have very large number of electrons as that of the conductors, and we don't have no electrons as that of insulators in case of semiconductors. Semiconductors will have a few number of electrons in the conduction band at room temperature. Therefore, their conductivity is relatively moderate, not as high as that of conductors, as not low as that of insulators. Therefore, the materials whose conductivity lies between the conductors and the insulators are called semiconductors. We cannot say it is a partially conducting one. It is not the base on which we define semiconductors partially conducting like that. We define conductors, semiconductors, insulators based on their conductivity or resistivity levels. Semiconductor conductivity is in between conductors and insulators. And because they have small energy gap, some of the electrons can go from valence band to conduction band. And the energy gap is very low and it is about 1 electron volt. But still we need some semiconductors whose energy gap may be large, maybe 2 electron volts or more also. They are called large band gap semiconductors. We need them for special purposes and they do exist. Those we can see it later. That is large band gap semiconductors, which are used for optoelectronic devices. So semiconductor thermal energy is sufficient to lift the electrons from valence band to conduction band. And these electrons, even though small in number, can contribute moderately to electrical and thermal conduction. So you know that the semiconductors examples germanium, silicon, graphite, and gallium arsenide, etc. So we'll see more examples later in this case. But as the temperature increases, in case of semiconductors, there is a probability of increasing the number of electrons in the conduction band and also holes in the valence band because of breakage of bonds. Thereby, as there is a breakage of covalent bonds in semiconductors, the number of electrons available or holes available will increase with increasing temperature. So as the temperature increasing, the number of available charge carriers also increases. As they are increasing, the conductivity level increases. Therefore, for semiconductor, the conductivity is a temperature dependent parameter. As the temperature increases, conductivity increases. So the conductivity is increasing means that the number of available charge carriers are increasing. So if you decrease the temperature, the number of available charge carriers also decreases. Here in semiconductors, we call charge carriers because there are two types of charge carriers. One is electron, the other is hole. We will see the concept of hole and electron maybe soon in the coming slides. But metals cannot have holes in them. Only electrons are possible in metals. Therefore, the study of electron flow in metals is generally electricity, and study of flow of electron holes in semiconductor is electronics. So you can change the conducting properties by changing the number of available charge carriers. The number of available charge carriers can be changed, altered by doping or by taking suitable compound semiconductors, or by alloying them, you can increase the conductivity. So as you change the conductivity by adding dopants, you can use those semiconductors for various applications. And we have two charge carriers. One is electron, the other is hole, and both will constitute current. Electron current and hole current are in opposite directions. We know that the motion of electrons, if it is in one direction, then the current is opposite direction. Therefore, the electron and hole currents are in the same direction. Therefore, net current in a semiconductor is due to electron current plus hole current, because holes are positively charged particles. So this is the gist of the segregation of solids by Crony-Penny model or band theory of solids. We have a conduction, we have insulators where conduction band and valence band are separated with a large energy difference. And in case of conductors, they are overlapped. In case of semiconductors, the gap is small and may be approximately equal to 1 electron volt. And if you want to more details, you can visit the website that was shown here. Now we will look at the energy gaps of different materials. These are the energy gaps of semiconducting materials at room temperature. So silicon 1.12 electron volts, germanium 0.67, gallium arsenide 1.43, cadmium sulfide 2.42, zinc oxide 3.37, SnO2 3.7, and zinc sulfide 3.54. These are some examples of band gaps at room temperatures. Now look at this. This is the figure which we have drawn in the earlier class as a reduced EK diagram. I have taken E on this and this is a K on this. And we also know that the bands are not uniform on straight lines as we are drawing, like this is the straight conduction band and this we are drawing as a straight valence band. This is the valence band we are drawing and this is the conduction band. But that is not the case. Bands are something like this and they are very complex. And when they are complex like this, now I will look at an electron which is moving in the lattice having a region called first Brillouin zone. This is called first Brillouin zone, and suppose say I considered here one electron. Suppose the electron is here. Okay, and the electron is moving. And we know that the bands are something like this. These are potential energy curves. And here is, this is conduction band curves, valence band curves, and above we have shown this as conduction band curves. And now look at very important concept here, which is that suppose electron is here and the slope is something like this. But when electron is here, the slope of the curve is like this. In this case, slope is in this direction. So we know that the force due to this potential energy, F, I can write it as m, the mass of the electron, and this potential energy creates an electron acceleration A. In this case, if I take a negative slope, F is equal to minus ma, or I'll write F by A is equal to minus m. But if I go here, I'll get F is equal to ma, and the force that is acting due to the potential is positive. Therefore, I'll get F is equal to plus ma. That means the position of electron in the band is very important. Then I'll get F is by A is equal to plus m. So the force that is acting the negative slope region of the band gives you deceleration, and positive slope gives you acceleration. Thereby the mass here is negative and the mass here is negative. But same electron which is moving in different regions of the band, and therefore the mass of the electron is not uniform in the crystal lattice. As the electron is moving to different locations of the band, its mass changes. So the true mass of a free electron is totally different from the mass when electron is within the solid and moving under the periodic potentials and bands. So therefore, we have an important concept that mass of the electron in a given solid moving under the influence of periodic potentials is not constant, and thereby the actual mass of a free electron is different from the mass felt by the electron within the lattice. And this mass felt by the electron within the lattice while it is moving is different at different locations of the band. Here you may have negative mass, here we have positive mass, here it may be same as that of the ordinary mass of the electron. Therefore, if me is the actual mass of electron at rest, then the electron which is moving in the lattice will have different mass than this, and that mass will call it as effective mass, and I call it as m star e. M star means that it is a effective mass of the electron. That's why if you look at this, I have the band curvatures are different here, and here is different. As the band curvatures are different, the masses of the holes in the valence band are also different. Look at this one, the mass of the electron at the lowest one is 0.043 me, where me is the rest mass of the electron. But if I go here, the mass is different and it is 4.2 me. Hence, the mass of the electron is not constant. If I go here, it is 0.74 me. So thereby 74% me, that is. Therefore, the mass of the electron in a given solid or in a crystal lattice is not constant, it varies. And this mass we call it as effective mass, so that I can take the mass of the electron as me star effective mass, and thereby I can treat the electron as a classical particle instead of considering mass m when it is at rest. Therefore, me is the mass of the electron at rest. Then, okay, it is varying. To include that variation of mass, I use another word called effective mass. By choosing this effective mass, I can treat the electron as a classical particle. Similarly, for holes also in the conduction in the valence band. That's why we'll look at more details about the effective mass of an electron. So the effective mass of electron is, as we say, that it has to move in the crystal lattice under periodic potentials and over the large distances when compared to the space. Therefore, when a free electron mass is different from the mass felt by an electron in the crystal. So the different mass the electron is feeling is called as the effective mass. And the effective mass of electron or an effective mass of hole may be larger, smaller than free electron mass. That means we have heavy holes or say light holes. So thereby the effective mass is not constant, and the effective mass is because of the periodic potential is accelerating or decelerating the particle at different band positions. Hence, we can show mathematically that the effective mass of electron is inversely proportional to curvature of the allowed band. So as we have drawn that the bands are now in the case of a conduction band or a valence band, they are varying something like this. So we said that it inversely proportional to curvature. What is the curvature of this? Inverse. Higher the curvature, less is the mass of the electron. And thereby we have a relation for m star, or more precisely for electron it is me star. If I take hole, I write it as mh star. The masses of electrons and holes are now different. Okay, mh star we call it as. Now this is given by h cut square by d square e by dk square. You know that h cut is 2 h by 2 pi. And if you apply your mathematics, if e is a function or f of is a function, then de by dk will give you the slope of the curve. The first derivative gives the slope of the curve, and the second derivative, if you take to that function or for that a given curve, it gives you curvature. So this is the curvature. It represents the curvature of the band, and thereby the curvature of the band changes from position to position. Thereby the mass of the electron or hole also changes from position to position, and thereby we may have me star, effective mass of electron, maybe at the bottom is exactly equal to the free electron mass, and as it is moving on either sides, the mass may be negative or mass may be positive. And this concept of effective mass having positive negative mass with the help of the crystal lattice leads to the concept of a hole. You cannot explain the concept of hole if you don't take the lattice into consideration. So lattice helps us to introduce the concept of hole, and therefore hole is a particle like electron but maybe virtual. Okay, and that particle will have a positive charge occupied with negative energy levels. So that is what we say about hole. But we'll see some more details about this effective mass. Effective mass of electron depends on the shape of the EK curve. That is the curvature d square E by dk square. And this is inversely proportional. The effective mass is inversely proportional to d square E by dk square, that is curvature. So we have curvatures like this or maybe like this. This is a more curved one. So we have a curvature something like this in the valence band, or we may have a curvature something going like this also. So therefore, the higher the curvature, lower will be the effective mass. And then if you look at the EK curve, EK curve is concave shaped at the bottom of the conduction band. So I am taking this is the EK diagram. This is maybe a conduction band, and I'll draw here a valence band curve may be like this. So at the bottom of the conduction band, this is concave shaped, hence effective mass is positive, whereas it is concave at the top of this. Therefore, the effective mass is negative. This means that the particle in that state will be accelerated by the field in the reverse direction, that is deceleration, and expected for a negatively charged electron, that is electron behaves as a positive charge. This gives you the concept of hole. Without Ketchel lattice, you cannot explain the concept of hole. But effective mass is a tensor quantity as it changes from point to point, not just like a scalar quantity. But most important points regarding the effective mass are: one, near the top of the band, if you look at the band, okay, near the top of the energy band, we have negative effective masses. A negatively charged particle with a negative mass will be accelerated like a positive charged particle with positive mass. That is what is hole. Thus, holes can be understood as an electron with negative effective mass with a positive charge. Therefore, hole is a positively charged particle. And the curvature is constant at the edge of the Brillouin zone or top of the energy zone, hence Me star is constant. That means the mass Me star effective mass is equal to mass of the rest mass of the electron. So this effective mass concept is introduced to treat the electron is solid as a classical particle. Thereby you can write some equations. With an idea of an electron and a hole existence in a semiconductor, we now look at various types of semiconductors. Some of you know already the various types of semiconductors. Can you just type in the chat box what are the different types of semiconductors you know, along with examples?
Intrinsic semiconductors, extrinsic semiconductors.
Yes, good. Very good. Any example for intrinsic semiconductors? Yeah, you can type already. So now, as you said, this intrinsic and semiconductor and extrinsic semiconductor, I am now giving the types of semiconductors like this. I have various classification based on composition of the semiconductor and also by doping and also by band gaps. If I take the semiconductor based on composition, they are classified as elemental semiconductors. That means they are elements in the periodic table, like silicon, germanium. They are best known semiconductors. They are elemental semiconductors. To increase the properties of the semiconductors, we need compound semiconductors. That means semiconductors can be formed by alloying or mixing the third and sixth group from the periodic table, or fourth and fifth group, or second and sixth group elements. Thereby, we will get a compound semiconductors: GaAs, GaP, GaAn, ZnS, CdS, CdTA are some of the compound semiconductors. These are elemental semiconductors. These are compound semiconductors. These are based on the composition you are selecting. And depending on doping, as you said, we have intrinsic semiconductors. Intrinsic means pure semiconductors, semiconductors in which if I take a silicon, 100% of the atoms are silicon with no impurity atoms added to it or existing in it, we call pure semiconductor. They mean semiconductor in purest form are called intrinsic semiconductors. However, we need not have 100% purity, but maybe 95%, 99% will be there. As you are increasing the purity, the cost of the element also increases. But in some applications, we need highest purity semiconductors. So intrinsic semiconductors are those semiconductors which are in purest form. And examples are silicon and germanium. And the next class is extrinsic semiconductors. Extrinsic semiconductors are those semiconductors which are having some impurities. So adding impurities to semiconductors is called doping. And doping is nothing but adding impurities or impurity atoms to the intrinsic semiconductor. Adding impurities as you like? No. We will do a careful controlled addition of these impurities. That gives rise to required properties, and they are called extrinsic semiconductors. So it is not that the impurity levels are as they like. So the impurity levels as we like for the device applications, we add them. It's a controlled addition of impurity atoms is called doping, and the doped semiconductor is called extrinsic semiconductor, and extrinsic semiconductors are further classified into p-type semiconductors by adding trivalent impurities from the third group of the periodic table like boron, aluminum, etc. And if you add dopants from the fifth group, we call them as n-type semiconductors, and the n-type semiconductors are formed by incorporating impurity atoms with pentavalency into the intrinsic semiconductor, and that will be addition of pentavalent atoms like phosphorus, arsenic, etc. They will give rise to n-type semiconductors. And then we will look at the band gaps. We have direct band gap semiconductors and indirect band gap semiconductors. If the conduction band is like this and if the valence band is like this, the minimum of the conduction band and maximum of the valence band falls at the same value. It is called direct band gap semiconductors. Okay. So I have given the here. These are of course indirect semiconductor. It should be somewhere here, and these are gallium, indium, and these are actually the direct band gap semiconductors. Okay, this I wrongly typed. So direct band semiconductors. Indirect band semiconductors means that we have something like this, a conduction band, and we have a valence band something like this. But minimum of this and maximum of this are falling at a different case, because this is an EK diagram, this is K and this is E. Then they are called indirect band gap semiconductors. Direct band gap semiconductors like gallium arsenide, indium arsenide, they are useful for making LEDs, etc. optoelectronic devices. Indirect band gap semiconductors like silicon and germanium are useful for making photodetectors, and hence they have different applications. This is the broad classification of semiconductors as based on composition, doping, and etc. Now, this is the difference between these two. You can read later, and we will look at intrinsic semiconductors. Intrinsic semiconductor is a pure form of it. To understand what is the pure form and what is the advantage of the intrinsic semiconductors, you should know the crystal structure of intrinsic semiconductor. Now, I am taking a simple one. The simple one means a silicon or a germanium atom. A single atom, I am taking silicon or germanium. And you know that silicon and germanium belonging to fourth group of the periodic table, therefore they are tetravalent. This is one electron, another electron, this is electron, this is another electron. So it is a tetravalent atom. So if you keep so many atoms side by side, you will get a one-dimensional solid. If you keep and extend in 3 dimensions, you will get a 3-dimensional solid. So therefore here I am looking at the first atom, tetravalent atom, and I am taking another tetravalent atom nearby it and one more. And when the tetravalent atoms are coming nearby it, these two electrons which are facing each other, and to get a solid formation, they have to form a bond. So therefore this electron and this electron is shared by the two neighboring atoms, this and this, to form a covalent bond. Therefore here the electrons which are there here, this is actually I'm showing as a covalent bond. So the nearing electrons from the nearest atoms, they form a covalent bond, and this covalent bond will be extended throughout the crystal, 3-dimensional crystal. So this will be there with the next atom, this will be there next atom, and the top atoms will also be there here. Atoms also will be there here, and they will be forming. Similarly, the bottom also electrons will be there, and this is extended in 3 dimensions and like this. And this is the case of a semiconductor, pure semiconductor, in which all the atoms are silicon atoms. There is no impure atom in this. Therefore, it's an intrinsic semiconductor. And in intrinsic semiconductor, this is the crystal structure at 0 Kelvin. As the energy available is minimum, thermal energy is minimum, all the electrons are now attached to their respective atoms, and respective atoms will form covalent bonds with the neighboring atoms. Therefore, this electron, another electron at this. Hence, there is no free electron available in at 0 Kelvin in an intrinsic semiconductor, because all the electrons are locked in covalent bonds. This is a covalent bond, this is a covalent bond, this will form the covalent bond with the next atom. Likewise, all the electrons of all the atoms are locked in the at 0 Kelvin in covalent bonds. As the covalent bonds are formed, no electron will be free, and all are now bound electrons to respective atoms. Thereby, no free electron is available at 0 Kelvin in an intrinsic semiconductor. Therefore, it is a best insulator at 0 K. A semiconductor, an intrinsic semiconductor, is a best insulator at 0 K because all the electrons are locked in the covalent bonds and no electron is freely available. Hence, conduction band is empty and therefore no electrical conduction by intrinsic semiconductor. And this is the structure of an intrinsic semiconductor at 0 Kelvin. But 0 K is for low temperature. But generally we do the devices at room temperature, lightly maybe at a slightly higher, lower temperatures. Therefore, we look at the same structure at a temperature, maybe room temperature T greater than 0. So I'm writing the same diagram here. So this is the one, and this is the one, and here you see that here I am not writing big bar. I have two electrons. They do also form a covalent bond like this. This is same as that of the structure at 0 K. Now I change. Okay, so I'll go and increase the temperature. As I increase the temperature T, the KT thermal energy raises. As the thermal energy is increasing, the covalent bond, the atoms absorb the energy and they slightly move away from each other from their mean positions, and because of the energy supplied is equivalent to breakage energy of the covalent bond, because to formation of the covalent bond we need some energy, and that is called bond energy. If you give the same bond energy, okay, by increasing the temperature, the bonds will break. Once the bonds will break, what is happening, we have to see it. So now I will see that as the T is increased, one of the covalent bond has broken up. As the bond is broken up, now these electrons are not bounded to any particular atom. Therefore, one of the electron will move away. Okay, and they are moved away. This is the bond, and if I go for it, okay, this is increased temperature, broken the bond. As it is broken the bond, you can now see that the electron is going out of the bond from an atom. This may go or this may go, so it has moved from here. Now this electron is not bound to this atom or this atom or this atom. So therefore this is called free electron. A free electron which is not bound to any of the atoms, but still it is bound to here. You see that it is not free electron. As electron is gone away from the covalent bond, there is a requirement of an electron here to form the bond. Now bond is broken up. As the bond is broken up, you can see that there is a vacancy here to fill to complete the covalent bond. This is a free electron now. I have a free electron. So now this, to complete the bond, we require an electron here. But there is electron is not there. It has gone out of the bond. Therefore, here we have lack of electron to complete the bond. Electron is negatively charged particle, but here I have lack of electron. That means this is a positively charged particle. So thereby The lack of an electron to complete the covalent bond is nothing but a hole. We call it as a hole. So therefore, in intrinsic semiconductor at room temperature, some of the covalent bonds will break up. The broken covalent bonds will create a free electron and a hole. Hole is lack of electron to complete the covalent bond. And as electron is not there means that it is positive charge. Therefore, hole is a positively charged particle and electron is a negatively charged particle. Both do exist in a semiconductor. Maybe this will be also maybe broken. If this is also broken, suppose say, then the electron will be released from that. From this, electron will be released and it will go here. So thereby we can say that electrons are now become free and they can move from one place to another place, and this is a free electron not bound to any one of that. And it's free electron not in the sense that it will go away from the out of the crystal. No, it cannot go out of the crystal. It will be there as a whole and it belongs to the crystal itself. Because of the surface energy of the crystal, it cannot go out of the crystal material. So thereby it will be there here only. So now suppose say some of the electron which is moving after breakage, suppose say this here also there is a breakage and we know that electron has come out of this. This is the electron and this electron starts moving in this and it is moving, it has come up to this, suppose say. So this atom is in need of an electron to have an octet configuration. These are all octave configurations. To have octet configuration, this atom is ready to take this electron so that it can reform and regain the covalent bond. If electron falls on this, because it's an empty space, because this is a hole, electron can fall on this. So this bond will be regained again, and in that sense I say that previously hole is here. As the new breakage of covalent bond has taken place, the electron while moving is absorbed by this atom. Now hole is here. That means in another sense hole has indirectly moved from this location to this location. So holes can also move. Therefore they constitute hole current. Electrons are direct particles. They can move from one position to another position because they are real particles. But to move holes, electron has to fall and fill that. So while energy is given, the bondage, breakage of bond taking place. Always breakage of bond produces an electron and hole pair. You cannot produce electron alone or hole alone by breaking the covalent bond. And this is called electron hole pair creation. Always breakage gives you one hole and one electron. If a hole is here and coming and falling, suppose this is the one, as electron has gone, this is the electron. And if this electron is falling in this, indirectly we say that the electron has moved, the hole has moved from this position to this position. Therefore, once the electron falls in this hole disappears, this electron also disappears, hole has moved from this position to this position. So once electron falls in a hole location, both will disappear, and this is called electron hole pair. Okay, electron hole pair, electron hole pair absorption. So we have electron is here and hole is here. Okay, if they are created, it is called electron hole pair creation. If electron is there, if hole is there, if it falls and fills it, it is called electron hole pair annihilation. So it is electron hole pair generation, it is electron hole pair recombination. To generate electron hole pair, you have to give energy. Once they are there and coming, they will give the energy out. So therefore, in semiconductor devices to explain the conductivity, emission of light, etc., etc., electron hole pair generation and electron hole pair recombination is most important, okay, concept. This is about a intrinsic semiconductor. Now we will look at some points for intrinsic semiconductor. As the breakage of covalent bond is creating one hole and one electron, the number of electrons and number of holes are always same in intrinsic semiconductors. And the concentration of electrons and concentration of holes are temperature dependent. And the number of holes and electrons, this is called number of electrons per unit volume is called electron concentration. Number of holes per unit volume is called hole concentration P. And this P and N are because of breakage of covalent bonds in intrinsic semiconductors, and therefore their available number is very less. As their number of available charge carriers are less, their conductivity is very, very low. Therefore, if you make a device using intrinsic semiconductors, the current is in very small, maybe nanoamperes. Therefore, they are not useful for making any devices. So we do require some additional charge carriers to get a device application. That's what we need, and impurity addition to intrinsic semiconductors, and thereby increase the number of electrons or increase the number of holes, so that the charge carrier number increases, concentration increases, and thereby the conductivity increases. Therefore, the current levels increases. Hence, they can be used for device applications. In intrinsic semiconductors, available charge carriers are very, very less. They cannot be used for any application. So we need more number of charge carriers, and that's why to get that we have to have an extrinsic semiconductor. So some of the electrons that are generated because of breakage of bonds due to available thermal energy, electron hole pairs are created. But these created electron hole pairs may recombine when electron falls in the already existing hole, and therefore the number of electrons and holes decreases by the same amount. Hence, in intrinsic semiconductor, N, the number of electrons available, is equal to number of holes that are there. We call it as N equal to P in intrinsic semiconductors. And this is called intrinsic semiconductor concentration Ni. Okay. So this is the one of the important concepts which we have to learn, but I also just quickly complete this extrinsic semiconductor within 5 minutes. Now we look at extrinsic semiconductors. Adding small quantities which are called impurities to the intrinsic semiconductor is called doping. A doped semiconductor is generally called as extrinsic semiconductor. A doped semiconductor means it is an impure semiconductor. So by adding impurities, what type of impurities you are adding is important. If you are adding pentavalent atoms, we will get N type of semiconductor. If you add trivalent atoms or impurities, we will get P type semiconductors. And the concentration means addition of impurities also changes. As the concentration of impurities added to intrinsic concentration, intrinsic semiconductors is different, then we'll get different semiconductor devices like a p-n junction diode, GNR diode, varactor diode, or Isaki diode, tunnel diode, etc. These devices will, the properties will change as the concentration of doping changes. Okay, as the concentration is changing, conductivity also changes, and as the conductivity is changed and its value is producing minimum required current to make a device, therefore extrinsic semiconductors are useful in making many devices. And in N-type semiconductors, we have majority charge carriers as electrons. In P-type, we have minority charges. That's what we'll see, of course. Now, I'm looking at a crystal structure of extrinsic semiconductor. To get extrinsic semiconductor, we know that in a trivalent crystal silicon or germanium, you need to add, okay, tetravalent silicon and germanium, you need to add as a point defects or impurities, trivalent impurities, or we have to add pentavalent atoms. So I have here 4 electrons and here I have 3 electrons. Here we have 5 electrons, that is pentavalent. Now I am taking the crystal structure something like this, which we have taken. Here the atom is also there and all are locked. Now what I do is I replace this atom by, okay, trivalent impurities. So if I replace that by trivalent impurities, then we'll have that atom has gone in that place. That is this is compositional defect. Okay, so we add trivalent impurity. If you add trivalent impurity, the 3 electrons of the trivalent impurity is now capable of forming bond with this, with this, with this. That means all 3 atoms neighboring are very happy because they formed the chemical bonding, that is covalent bond. But this atom is unhappy because it has given no electron here. Therefore, this bond is incomplete. That means there is a hole created. So therefore, addition of trivalent impurities creates only holes, not electrons. Therefore, holes will be more in number. At the same time, there will be a breakage of bonds because of temperature T. Therefore, if there is a breakage of bonds, this will go, we have 1 electron, but hole is there. So we have 2 holes and 1 electron. And if I replace this atom by trivalent of this, I'll have 1 more hole. The addition of each trivalent atom to the tetravalent crystal gives you 1 extra hole. Therefore, the number of holes are more than the number of electrons, and hence the more number of holes are there in p-type, hence we call it positive and it is p. Now in case of n-type, I am taking the same crystal structure, but at the center we should have, instead of 4, I have 5 pentavalent atom. So for this electron, this electron, this electron, this electron will be shared by neighboring atoms, and all 4 neighboring atoms are happy because they form the covalent bond. But this is not in the bond. This is a free electron. Therefore, it can move anywhere in the crystal. So in this case, there is a hole formation. In this case, an excess free electron is created. Therefore, in this case, the p-type material, if an electron is coming and here, it's ready to take the atom. Okay, and thereby this bond is formed. Hence, p-type impurities or trivalent impurity atoms, when they are added, they are ready to accept an electron to form the covalent bond. Therefore, they are called as acceptor impurities. They are acceptor impurities. But addition of if I take addition of pentavalent atom is ready to give 1 electron more to the crystal, and we have free electrons. Therefore, in n-type, electrons are more in number because of addition of this. And this will be a free electron. It is donating an electron to the crystal lattice. Thereby, we call the pentavalent atoms as donor impurities. Donor impurities from the 5th group. But in any case, here holes are more because of 2 reasons. One, the increased temperature may break the covalent bond, create a hole and electron. And the electrons are more because of addition of trivalent impurities. Therefore, the holes are more because of addition of trivalent impurities, and also holes are increasing because of breakage of bonds. In pentavalent atoms, the pentavalent impurity is giving 1 electron extra, and breakage of bonds also gives you 1 electron in addition to hole. Therefore, I do have holes but small in number in n-type. I do have electrons but small in number in p-type. So they have n-type and p-type materials like this. So I stop here, and in the next class we will look at Fermi energy level in semiconductors. We have already seen Fermi energy level in metals. Now how to implement that Fermi energy level to semiconductors, we will see it. I stop here. Those who are having any doubts, they can just ask the doubts through chat.